This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with AutoQuote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Good afternoon. Let's do some business. We're doing it live right here. Been doing more at 4 weekday afternoons throughout 2024. And what a year it's been. We come on right after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money live on the air on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, KBC.com, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, all of your favorite podcast platforms. Losing finish today to another record-shattering week for tech stocks. Stocks closing out the trading week near the unchanged mark today, with the S&P 500 and Dow posting a drop for the week, while the NASDAQ came in for gains, fourth consecutive week of gains. Broadcom taking the spotlight today, forecasting quarterly revenue blowing past analyst expectations and predicting robust growth in its demand for its custom AI chips over the next couple of years. Broadcom stock shooting higher by more than $44 at $224 and change, a jump of about nearly 25%, and pushing the market cap for Broadcom past $1 trillion for the first time. We did see AI bellwether NVIDIA close 2.2% lower today. Tech stocks, though, continued their upward momentum this week, driving the NASDAQ above the 20,000 mark for the first time to a record-high close on Wednesday. Since then, we've seen a pullback. This ahead of the big Fed meeting next week. We did get a couple of readings on inflation this week, which came in a bit hotter than expected. The Fed will be taking a close look at that. Right now, trader bets on another Fed rate cut coming up here next week stand at 97%. The Dow came in for a closing loss today of 234 points, settling at 43,914. The S&P 500 down 33. The NASDAQ down 132. Stocks repeatedly reached all-time highs this year, driven by surging interest in heavyweight tech companies, including those in the Mag 7, and another boost, of course, following the November election. President-elect Trump getting set to take office. The transition is underway. We'll be talking about some of the big issues here involving taxes. That'll be with Grover Norquist coming up later this hour. Also, coming up this hour, we'll be talking about holiday shopping as well as holiday tipping coming up this holiday season. Ted Rossman from Bankrate.com will be joining us. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, crypto too. We can't forget about crypto with Bitcoin moving above 100,000 this week and seems to like it there. Let's bring in Jonathan HOENIG now. Investment expert Jonathan HOENIG, Fox News and Fox Business contributor, portfolio manager at Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund, and author of the book Price is Primary, How to Profit with Any Asset at Any Market at Any Time. He also wrote the introduction, by the way, to a very sweet book for dog lovers out there titled, Can You Really Love a Dog? Consideration for your holiday book gifting list. Jonathan HOENIG, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon. Gosh, I hope you're not on mute. Jonathan.
Thank you. It's great to be, Frank, it's great to be with you. And it's not just Bitcoin hitting new all-time highs this week. Even Fartcoin, Frank, no joke. Fartcoin has now a $500 million market cap. This is one of those so-called meme coins or altcoins. All-time highs everywhere you look, whether it be tech stocks, Bitcoin, crypto, all the rest this week.
Isn't that something? So how do we describe that kind of a rally? I'll have to think about that, but that is very interesting. So along with with Bitcoin, the other cryptos have largely been along for the ride. Ethereum, which we talk about as well here, above 3,900 here, and Doge at 41 cents. Looks like the cryptos are getting more of your attention these days.
Well, Frank, look, it's hard to ignore these all-time highs and all-time interest among investors. You know, the rise in the Bitcoin ETFs has been the fastest growing ETFs in history. The amount of money that's flown into IBIT, that's the most popular Bitcoin ETF. This is 5 times faster than any other ETF ever. There's also a tremendous amount of optimism out there, Frank. There was a conference board number out a couple of days ago. more than 58% of Americans are expecting higher stock prices, and by that I'd say higher risk assets in the following 12 months. That's a good thing, I suppose, but that tends to be a great contrarian indicator. So I must say I am a little cautious here, and it's not just my feeling. Despite the market hitting all-time highs for days, Frank, the breadth of the market, the number of stocks actually going up versus going down, has been negative for 10 days. In fact, it's been negative for 10 days for the S&P 500. So, look, I manage money professionally, and I have to say I agree with Mr. Buffett here. Now is the time for some cash, and I believe some caution.
Very interesting. And that one you mentioned at the top, does that have a high gas fee?
In
the crypto world?
Coin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
now that's...
we've really seen that. I mean, Frank, if you would have just described even a couple months ago, little years ago, that Doge, which is really started as a joke, would be not only a major market cap of billions and billions of market cap, but also be instituted as, in effect, not a branch of government, but certainly a committee of government with it as its name. I mean, you would have never imagined this years ago. So these are kind of unprecedented times for crypto, I must admit.
Very interesting. We continue to expand our crypto vocabulary here. There is something called a gas fee. Gas is the fee required to successfully conduct a transaction or execute a contract on the Ethereum blockchain platform. So that is the technical definition of a gas fee, by the way, to follow up on this big news here today. And let me ask you this, as far as the ETFs that you're tracking here in the crypto world, Bitcoin as well as Ethereum, we've seen more wild predictions, and of course, Michael Saylor with MicroStrategy, that stock up again today, up more than 4%, up 16 and change to 408 and change. He's getting a lot of attention with his Bitcoin buying. What are your thoughts about where this thing goes from here?
Well, Frank, I remember in the late 90s, I mean, tech stocks went up in 97, 98, and then everyone said, they can't go up in 99. They went up 100%. And look, I'm not a crypto fanatic, but the fact that the price, is hovering right near those all-time highs suggests that the market is likely to even move higher. But I think now is when most people make the mistake of just investing too much. One of the big banks was out this morning with a note, suggesting, an allocation for crypto, 1%, 2%. Look, I'd even say 5 or 10% if you really believe in crypto. But don't buy on the way down, Frank. I always advise against this. This is where people really lose money when it comes to markets. If you like it at 50, like it at 50 and 60 and 70 and 80. But when you buy a stock or a security at 50 and it goes to 30, it's telling you you're on the wrong track. So if you're a crypto fanatic, take that shot, but don't average on the way down.
On there live with Jonathan Hoenig with Fox Business and Fox News, also portfolio manager at Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund, author of the book Price is Primary, How to Profit with Any Asset in Any Market at Any Time. So that's why we're hearing more about price. Speaking of price, Tesla has had a big run recently, up another 18 today to 436 and change. Elon Musk's value, his net worth, up more than $10.2 billion this week. In fact, maybe just today even, at $439.4 billion. Wealthiest guy in the world.
Stunning, Frank. I mean, yeah, absolutely stunning. I mean, the rise in Tesla alone, I believe something on the order of 70% just since the election, shares of Tesla. And this isn't like a penny stock. We're talking about one of the largest companies in the planet. So tremendous value of being that close, obviously, to President-elect Trump and to his net worth at all. Frank, Elon Musk is so wealthy now. His net worth is roughly double than that of Jeff Bezos, for example, or Larry Ellison from Oracle. So he is not as wealthy, not just wealthy, but he's twice as wealthy as the next wealthy person on Earth. Pretty remarkable.
That is absolutely amazing. And so, by the way, one of his rockets just flew over our head a little while ago here in California out of Vandenberg Space Force Base. Another SpaceX rocket took off this afternoon, so that's what that was, if you're wondering, if you're looking toward the west today. So big week for Elon Musk. And what about Broadcom here, suddenly bursting on the scene here on AI stuff, more than 44 to 224 and change today, Broadcom.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of echoing that trend that's been it was the trend for the first half of the year, for most of the second half. It kind of ebbed for a few months, but, it is all the year of big tech, Frank. In fact, interestingly, the average stock this year was down. I mean, the indices are up dramatically. The average stock did not beat the market this year. It underperformed the market. So once again, a very few select stocks leading the way. And, it's very unsexy now, but, I still think an asset like VB, that's the Victor Boy, this is a very plain ETF, but it doesn't focus on the big stocks. It focuses on the small stocks. And, Frank, they're as cheap as they've been in years. In fact, on average, small cap stocks are trading about 9% below their historical average in terms of valuation. Large cap are about 18% above their historical valuation. So, look, I look at price, but I don't like to overpay. And I think small cap VB is going to be a good place to hide in 2025.
Are you paying attention to what Warren Buffett has been doing lately? He's sitting on a pile of cash. He's seems to be hitting the caution light here, right? What about his latest moves here?
I think that we started with that. I think caution is warranted, Frank. I mean, cash isn't trash. And in fact, despite the fact, as you said, the market is widely expecting a cut from the Fed in terms of rates, I actually wouldn't be surprised if you started to see rates rise. I mean, look at the yield. The yields were up dramatically this week. And one ticker that's on my radar screen is RISR. This is an interesting ETF. It actually benefits from higher interest rates. So it pays a dividend just like a regular bond would if you were, pays interest, but it also goes up when interest rates go up. So it's starting to break out as well. So I think the market tends to surprise people. And I think, despite the fact that headline inflation's come down, I actually think you could see rates rise sometime late in 2025.
Very interesting. And you've been reporting about President-elect Trump's invitation to the Chinese leader for the inauguration coming up here. I could signal a grace period before China faces tariffs. Looks like the Chinese leaders rejected the invitation, but very interesting things happening. And what is the talk here ahead of President Trump taking office regarding tariffs, especially as it relates to China?
Well, I'll tell you, the shippers, Frank, and those often are great indicators of the strength of, obviously, the maritime shipping, but trade writ large. A lot of those shipping stocks, names like Frontline, for example, FRO, at 52-week lows, extremely weak, which is not exactly a great harbinger for shipping. Neither have the Chinese stocks been doing well at all. They've been dramatically underperforming. An unusual stock maybe to put on your radar screen or, as a contrarian play, CBON, like CBON. It's actually an ETF, Frank, that owns Chinese bonds. And if we see this very frosty relationship, I think, between the U.S. and China, if we see it start to warm perhaps a little bit under President Trump, a lot of these Chinese stocks and assets could get a bump. So CBON is one to do your own due diligence, but as an alternative play, I think you could find some value there.
Very interesting. Any other specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Sure. I think now's the time to not all in, but look at commodities. I mean, a lot of the commodity indices, Frank, despite gas prices at a 3-year low, have been breaking out. USCI, that's USCI, is a basic plain Jane general commodity index that I think if this is a period of higher inflation, in fact, will benefit. And I also like, as in particular stock, Frank, Gannett. Gannett is a major newspaper owner, and I know that's like being a very big fish in a small pond these days. I mean, print publishing is out. We know that, but these small stocks are ripe for consolidation and ripe for appreciation. So GCI, Gannett, not going to find it in the S&P 500 necessarily, but it's a small stock that I think it has a lot of staying power. And, of course, do your own due diligence, but it's one that I'm looking at over at Capitalist Pig.
All right. And what about oil? It's been rising again this week in the face of the latest upheaval in the Middle East and the latest military actions and so forth. What about oil in this environment?
Yeah, I mean, oil is going to be covered by, in general, a rise of commodities. But I have to say, Frank, I've been surprised to see a lot of the oil stocks actually breaking down. ConocoPhillips this week was at a new 52-week high. Devon Energy is another energy player that's actually been underperforming quite a bit. So, those had been pretty much steady eddies. But if the economy really starts to slow down, they could underperform. So I think, I'd probably rather own USO. If you're bullish on oil, USO is an ETF that basically tracks just that, the price of oil less expensive. And that's probably where I'd be placing my bets now. Not on oil companies, but on oil itself. And USO is the way to play it.
All right, terrific, Jonathan. Of course, it is the holidays, and I'm sure people can get your books via Amazon, right, including Price is Primary, How to Profit with Any Asset in Any Market at Any Time. And we should also mention that very sweet book for dog lovers that came out, about a year ago, titled Can You Really Love a Dog, which you wrote the introduction to. That is also a lovely gift possibility as well. You want to tell us about that?
Thank you, Frank. Yeah, well, look, we can argue about stocks, but there's no argument about how much we not only love our dogs and cats, but how truly valuable they are and how unique that love is. Love for an animal, Frank, it's not like that for a spouse or even a child. It's something very unique. And Ayn Rand, the philosopher, she loved her cats passionately and had actually a lot to say about the subject. So with her intellectual heir, Leonard Peikoff, we have this book, Can You Really Love a Dog? Ayn Rand and Leonard Peikoff on pets. It's at Amazon. Totally great, unique gift for the pet lover. So check it out. And Frank, thank you for not only being such a great friend to me over the years, but a great friend to liberty and to honesty and truth. So Southern California is very lucky to have you, and I'm delighted to be with you.
Wonderful, Jonathan. Well, thank you very much. You're terrific, and we appreciate it every time you're on here. We'll be looking for you on social media and on Fox News and Fox Business this weekend. That is the one and only Jonathan HOENIG, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Mixed finish for the stock market. The NASDAQ ended the day higher, actually, up 23 points today at 19,927, and what was a record-shattering week for the NASDAQ, closing above 20,000 for the very first time. I think my computer didn't refresh earlier on, but we did see the NASDAQ posting a gain for the day, up 23 points, make it 24 points just about. The Dow, though, did pull back 86 points at 43,828, and the S&P 500 down a fraction at 6,051. The price of oil continued to pop today. It was an up week for the price of oil, with the upheaval in the Middle East continuing. Oil up $1.07 today at $71.09 a barrel in New York. Gold pulling back at $43.50 an ounce, down $43.50 an ounce to $2,665.90 an ounce. Of course, crypto took the spotlight again this week, with Bitcoin moving above 100,000 and seeming to like it there. $101,473 per Bitcoin here at the moment, down about 200 at this moment. Ethereum up 17 at 3,924. It's been part of the week above 4,000. And Doge at the moment at 41 cents. Broadcom having a big day, up more than $44 at $224.80. MicroStrategy getting a lot of attention with its Bitcoin acquisitions lately, up more than $16 today at $408.67, a jump of 4.2%. Tesla having a big week, up another $18 today at $436.23, up 12% for the week. Elon Musk's net worth now at $439.4 billion. Yep, popping above $400 billion for the first time this week. And now the latest news for you here on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC, with Bitcoin hitting above 100,000 this week and staying there for at least the last couple of days. A lot of attention focused on crypto nowadays. President-elect Trump has proposed no capital tax on crypto. That's one idea that's being floated. Also, no taxes on for first responders, no taxes for veterans, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on tips. And the list goes on. As the Trump transition continues, congressional Republicans are preparing to take speedy action on several parts of incoming President Trump's core agenda, including permanent tax relief, border security, and energy. Let's bring in the expert in all this, Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform. Grover, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon, for advocating for all of us taxpayers out there.
Well, good to be with you.
All right, give us the update now as the Trump transition continues here. Tell us what's on the table.
Well, Trump would like to have the tax cuts that passed in 2017 continued out into the future because of the way that laws work and how to avoid going through filibuster. They can only last as long as 10 years, and a number of them are disappearing in 2025. That's the lower tax rates that all Americans got. It's the per-child tax credit. It's the doubling of the deduction, standard deduction from $12,000 to $24,000, which has made 90% of Americans not have to file with all sorts of receipts and so on because the standard deduction is so high. It's a very, very great, it's a good plan, and we need to keep it going. In addition to that, he's talked about some other things to add to that, taking the corporate rate, which is now 21%. Remember, when you compete internationally, most countries don't have states that have the ability to have income taxes. So their income tax, their corporate income tax at 25, we're at 21. We actually have an average of more than 4% tax on corporate. So when we say we have a 21% tax, actually 25, which puts us even with China. I'm not sure I want to be even with China. I want to have lower taxes in China so we can compete on lower taxes, not lower wages. And so he says, let's take that corporate rate down to 15. Extremely helpful, good idea, very good for economic growth. Getting rid of the deductibility of state and local corporate taxes would more than pay for reducing the rate to 15. So it's basically tax reform at the corporate level. And states, of course, can reduce their own corporate rates, which I think many would as a result. He's also talked, as you point out, about a number of other things. One that hasn't got as much attention, but it's not a large number, so it may well happen, and that is ending the double taxation of Americans who live abroad. If you're a Frenchman working in America, you pay American taxes. You do not pay French taxes on your income because you paid them in America because you earned it in America. If you're an American living in France, if you earn money, you pay both French taxes and American taxes. The United States and Eritrea are the only two countries that do that. Eritrea does it because they're tagging people from Eritrea, small African country, who are living in Sweden, either having jobs or on welfare, and they wanted a piece of that action. Ending that double taxation of Americans abroad would be very helpful to Americans who'd like to work abroad, have the opportunity. But if you're double taxed, you're more expensive than everybody else, so the job will go to a German or a Frenchman or a Canadian or something like that. We lose a lot of jobs to that. So the challenge now is how quickly can we get this done? We have a 3-vote margin in the Senate. That's pretty good. You can probably pass any good tax idea through the Senate. In the House, we only have like a 1 or 2 vote margin, and that depends on some of the people Trump wants to put into his cabinet would no longer be available to vote for tax reform. But if you did tax reduction early, perhaps you could then let somebody go off to be head of the American representative at the United Nations. Just as soon as you got the tax bill passed, then they could go. And then you have to have a special election. That can take several months in many states. We're one bad car accident or scandal away from losing control of the House for Republicans, at which point there is no tax cut, there is no tax cut, there is no tax cut. The Democrats will just say no to everything, and there'll be a $4 to $5 trillion tax increase. If we don't continue the Trump tax cuts, it's a tax increase of $4 to $5 trillion. That's what Kamala Harris ran on. And we could end up with that if the Republicans don't act now while they have their majority. Hopefully in the future it will get bigger. But right now it's very, very narrow, and we can't take any risks. We can't wait around. And the other piece to the puzzle is you want to cut taxes now so that people decide to start making plans for new investments over the next year or two. There's an election in 2 years. We need people investing more and creating jobs now so that they show up in time for the next election and people can go, thank you very much, I'm for more of that, and they vote you back into office. What happened to us when Reagan cut taxes and the Democrats delayed them for a year was that the growth was really great in 1983. It was 4 million jobs in a much smaller workforce, 4 million jobs, very big. But the year before that was the election, 82, and Republicans lost about 25 House seats because we delayed the tax cuts from taking effect. And the growth was later. In 2017, we had tax cuts. They weren't passed for a year. It was December 22nd that Trump signed the tax cuts. It took a year to get that done. What happened? Great growth in 2019 after the Republicans lost 40 House seats in 2018 because the economy hadn't grown yet. It takes a while when you cut taxes for people to make investments, buy new trucks, get new computers, come up with new factories. That doesn't happen overnight. You got to tell people today, I'm telling you, the taxes are lower and they're going to keep lower years out. So make your plans and start investing and creating jobs now. We need that to happen in the next couple of months, not 6 months from now or a year from now.
On the air live with Grover Norquist, the president of Americans for Tax Reform. Thank you very much for laying it out as you did there, Grover Norquist, on these other proposals that they're talking about. President Trump's administration reportedly plans to eliminate capital gains taxes on cryptocurrencies and some other ideas here, tips as well, and no taxes for veterans, for first responders, and so forth. What are the prospects of these proposals going through as well?
I think the idea of not taxing cryptocurrency, because cryptocurrency is a currency. It's like taxing a dollar. We don't tax people when the value of the dollar goes up and say, now you've got more money. It's a capital gain on the dollar. The dollar is a currency. There's a great suggestion that I really like, which is all strategic minerals kept in the United States, stored here, lithium and all the things that you need to protect the country in case there's conflict with China or Russia and we couldn't get more stuff quickly. Gold, silver, everything that the Pentagon says is a key strategic mineral. There should be no capital gains tax on that if you keep it in the United States, in the lower 48, where it can be used if there's a challenge. And all you'd have to say is, I promise to sell it to the government at the market price if the government acts. Okay? So people, rather than storing their gold and silver, and I'm using those because they're the cool ones, but lithium and all these cobalt and all these boring strategic minerals that should be stored in the United States, and it wouldn't cost us anything to store them because people who had that material say, I'm not going to hold on to it in Zaire or in France or somewhere else. I can put it in the United States where there's no capital gains tax on it. And if there's a conflict, I have to sell it, but at market prices, not, I'm not getting cheated and I'm not gouging the U.S. government. The materials we need, even if we don't dig them out of the earth here, even if we don't refine them here, they should be stored here and remain tax-free. That and cryptocurrency, same deal.
All right. What about taxes? No taxes on tips. Is that going to happen?
I think there will be, yes. The word from the White House is that, one, they were very serious about that. Two, there's a wish list of tax cuts, and the question is, how much can you cut taxes, this year versus, people, what can you fit in the tax package? That's not a big number. And Ted Cruz, senator from Texas, and Senator Daines of Montana have put together legislation to do that. I think that will be part of the package, yes.
Grover, thank you very much for that comprehensive update. As always, we'll be looking for you on social media as well as your Americans for Tax Reform website as well. That is Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform, live with us here this afternoon on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. Santa's helper is busy out there with just 12 days to go now until Christmas and Hanukkah. Let's bring in the expert here on consumer finance issues. That is Ted Rossman, senior industry analyst at Bankrate.com. A lot to talk about with the holiday shopping, holiday tipping, also a big issue. We're just talking about possibly no tax on tips coming up in the new administration. Ted Rossman, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, what's the latest here on some holiday shopping tips here to not spend every last nickel and get the best deals out there, and also at every turn, tipping is an issue these days.
Yeah, when it comes to holiday tipping, We're seeing a pretty stable situation. So most of the year, we're actually getting pretty fed up with tipping as a society. 6 in 10 Americans have a negative view of tipping. 3 in 10 think it's just kind of gotten out of control. A lot of people throughout the year are tipping less for things like restaurant meals, haircuts, and taxis and ride shares. The good news is around the holidays, the situation is pretty stable. We've actually seen similar numbers the past 4 years. The one exception was 2022, which kind of dipped a little bit. That's when inflation peaked. Ever since, holiday tipping has actually improved a little bit. So year-end tips for housekeepers and teachers and mail carriers and landscaping services, they're actually up a little bit relative to 2 years ago.
All right, so folks feeling a bit more generous, especially this time of the year. One trend that I've noticed, a lot of restaurants these days are including the tip on the check, including at some of the high-end places. Have you noticed that as well?
We are seeing a little bit of that, and some of that is because people are tipping less. Only 2/3 of restaurant goers always tip the waitstaff. It's even worse in certain demographics, like Gen Zers, for example. Only 1/3 of Gen Zers always tip at a sit-down restaurant. That's really shockingly low. So that's one of the reasons why these restaurant owners have started implementing forced tipping, because some people are skipping out on the tip.
Yeah, and in some cases, the whole bill. Another trend I've noticed, some places require when you order that you pay in advance. You don't wait until the end of the meal nowadays. Have you noticed that too?
You know, I haven't heard as much about that. Maybe that's more at a place where people are kind of dining and dashing. I mean, some of it speaks to high costs. I mean, obviously, we should be paying for meals that we're ordering. So, you know, if you can't afford it or if you can't afford to tip well, honestly, probably shouldn't be going there in the first place. But some of this is wrapped up in just broader themes about inflation. Businesses are looking to push more of the burden on the customer to pay the employees' wages, because the business doesn't want to pay any more than they have to. They've already raised prices. They're hesitant to raise it further. So that's why more businesses are asking for tips.
And with the LA City Council this week imposing an additional wage hike for tourism employees at the objection of the various business leaders here in Los Angeles, that is also a big issue. And now businesses are looking for more ways to automate what had been jobs. And now, of course, people are facing these iPads, and you don't even know who you're tipping anymore when they flip the screen over and you see those choices there. What about automation in all of this? And in some cases, are you tipping a machine?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? But I've seen that too. I was asked to tip a self-checkout machine at Newark Airport once. It was one of these situations when you take your sandwich and drink out of the fridge and then you scan it yourself, and then it wanted a tip. And it's like, well, yeah, who are we tipping? The company says that the tip goes to the workers who are stocking the shelves and playing more of a security guard kind of role, but it does feel like a bit of a sign of the apocalypse to be tipping a self-checkout machine. The automation theme also relates to higher costs for businesses, like California's $20 minimum wage for fast food workers. One of the responses has been to try to get by with less staff and use more automation.
Right, including robots. We've seen in some restaurants where the food is being delivered actually by robots, right? So are we supposed to tip them as well?
You know, it's a weird one because there is some human at some point on the chain. You know, we don't usually tip the back of the house people, the hardworking cooks. And, you know, that's actually a point of contention for some, that they say tipping is unfair, that, you know, it can be racist, it can be sexist, it favors the front of the house people. And what about those in the back of the house? But, you know, then again, any efforts to change that have not gone very far. Customers don't like higher prices, so if you do away with tipping and you raise prices, that's not a great outcome. The minimum wage situation can be different, too. The federal tipped minimum wage for servers and other tipped employees is just $2.13 an hour. It's better for the back of the house, but you know, it's different in certain places, too. Like I know California has different standards, but there are unintended consequences with all of this. And I think we're stuck with tipping for better or for worse, but it's controversial.
Well, a tip of the hat to you this holiday season, Ted. Thank you very much for taking the call. I'm sure we'll hopefully have a chance to talk again as we get through the holiday shopping season here. That is Ted Rossman, Senior Industry Analyst at Bankrate.com, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and I'll be back with more at 4 on Monday afternoon right here, 790 KBC.
Afford Anything talks about how to avoid common pitfalls, how to refine your mental models, and how to think about how to think.
Selena Gomez is a billionaire thanks largely to her entrepreneurial endeavors. Your W-2 paycheck, whether big or small, can never generate the level of wealth that can be achieved by owning assets.
Make smarter choices and build a better life.
Afford Anything, wherever you listen.